Ниту владата предводена од Самарас, ниту било која друга грчка влада нема да стори ништо за правата на македонското малцинство во Грција, предупредува Панајот Димитрис од грчкиот Хелсиншки мониторинг. Ексклузивно за Македонската радио и телевизија, Димитрис открива дека сите грчки политичари се обседнати со фантазијата дека во земјата не постои македонско малцинство.
We have the question of the Macedonian minority and the rights of the refugees of the civil war once again being raised on a high international level by Macedonian Prime Minister Gruevski during his meeting with UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. What Prime Minister Gruevski asked was an effort for Greece to start respecting the recommendations from the report that the UN expert McDougall made during her visit in Greece. The visit was like 3 years ago and nothing really changed so far. So is there any chance for the government led by Samaras to change something?
First of all, there's no chance that the government headed by Mr. Samaras, who on these issues has been known to be an extreme nationalist from the beginning of the problem, is going to do anything on this. But on this issue too, there's no chance that any government, headed even by the most moderate prime minister on those issues, will do anything because this is a taboo issue. You know that the comments of the Greek Foreign Ministry to Mr. Gruevski's statement was, where reason ends, fantasies begin. My point is that when the spokesperson made the statement, he should have been looking at the mirror, because this is exactly Greece's problem and not Macedonia's problem. The fantasy that there is no Macedonian minority is an obsession of all Greek political parties, of all Greek governments, but all international organizations, and as recently as in June, the UN Committee for the Rights of the Child, and in May, the UN Committee Against Torture, repeated to Greece that they have to recognize and offer rights to all minorities, even the non-recognized one, and especially the Committee on the Rights of the Child, where we brought the issue of the fact that you cannot have Macedonian names, first names, last names in Greece. They explicitly mentioned that Greece should respect the rights of the children who come from the Turkish Pomak Macedonian, they name them, minorities. So the whole world believes one thing, and Greece is isolated, just like Bulgaria is on the other side, isolated, believing that all that is fantasies.
Одбивањето да го регистрира Домот на македонската култура и покрај пресудата на Европскиот суд е уште еден доказ дека Грција нема намера да ги имплементира одлуките кои се однесуваат на македонските здруженија, вели Димитрис, нагласувајќи дека Грција нема да попушти за овие прашања се додека не биде присилена од меѓународната заедница.
But how is it possible for a Greece who is a member state of EU, of NATO and of UN not to respect such an important documents, recommendations and obligations coming from those organizations?
First of all, human rights are really not the concern of the EU, regardless of all the myths that they claim that they are. Even more for NATO. The United Nations has bodies, I mentioned some of them, and the Council of Europe, most importantly, whose exclusive item is human rights, have means. However, there is no implementation of those decisions. It's characteristic that the home of Macedonian culture, that has been trying since the 1980s to register, has been refused registration, won in the European Court, has been refused registration again, and we are expecting now, in the next few months, that the new application that we filed on behalf of the court to the European Court will be communicated to Greece, and Greece will be convicted once again, as they have over the Turkish associations. But again, there is no real means to impose. Greece said that they will not implement the decisions concerning Macedonia and Turkish associations. Greece will fight to the end until they are forced in a way that they will have no exit by some troika on human rights as opposed to economic issues, to respect these rights, and not only these rights. Greece has probably the worst record of human rights. within the EU and maybe one of the worst within the Council of Europe on issues of minorities, not on other issues.
Well, why is there such a big problem with recognizing Macedonian identity? Not only in terms of the Macedonian minority, but Macedonian identity in general.
Because Greeks have been led to believe that this is threatening their own identity and their own national myths. Greece has failed to modernize the national myth of the Greek nation, because all nations, including the Macedonian one, have their national myths, and usually they are modernized. Greece is obsessed, stupidly, because there is nothing that really threatens the Greek state, the Greek borders, the Greek nation.
Антимакедонизмот во Грција е главна струја, а човековите права се маргинализирани, објаснува Димитрис.
We have Metropolitan Antimos from Thessaloniki every Sunday in the middle of the church preaching how Macedonians were enemies of Greece. Why is there such a big anti-Macedonian propaganda present here in Greece?
The bishop in Thessaloniki, who has been hostile not just to Macedonians, he has been hostile to almost everything. He's a nationalist, and it's indicative that we have nationalist top civil servants, because the church is part of the civil service, who are there, and we have another bishop in Piraeus who is worse, and they are unhindered because we have laws against racism, and when we try to apply it, we got nothing. Greece is convicted internationally for not applying anti-racist law. In Greece, racism, which includes anti-macedonianism, is mainstream. Human rights are marginalized.
And last but not least, do you think there is still some irredentism in Greece towards the territory of Macedonia? If we know that the Minister of Sports a few months ago said how he regrets that his relatives didn't free the Macedonian town of Gevgelia. I mean, is it possible that this person who is now member of the government feels and thinks that the Macedonian town of Gevgelia actually belongs or should belong to Greece?
Well, many people make stupid statements, including politicians. None of them, except for the hard-line, far-right people, represent real irredentism. They represent nationalism. They are stupid, and you hear equally stupid statements from the Macedonian side. But in the sense of having claimed territories, no, for a very simple reason. We are in the EU. The border between Greece and Macedonia is now an EU border between an EU member country and an EU candidate country. So you cannot change those borders. As soon as the name issue is solved, the borders will cease to exist, because Macedonia will join eventually the EU, and therefore, what can you claim it?
Yeah, well, basically Macedonia joining the EU would solve lots of problems, especially between the two countries, two neighboring countries. Then why is Greece still blocking Macedonia's entry in EU and NATO?
Well, since the EU members from the very beginning gave Greece the right to veto the entrance of Macedonia into the European Union under its constitutional name, or now under any name, even the former Yugoslav Republic Macedonia, before the final name is negotiated. And since it's extremely difficult for the EU states to change that, unless someday a majority in the European Parliament decides that enough is enough, and they vote clear resolutions that will force the Council to change their attitude, or if not forcing, putting insurmountable pressure, but that needs a few more years. I think that will continue business as they are now, and that is detrimental for the whole region, because in a way, if you don't admit Macedonia, it's very difficult to admit Montenegro and Albania.
Thank you very much. I was told that you were a true Democrat, and I'm sure of it now. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Well, I'm a true European in a country where not many people are true Europeans. Thank you.
Thank you again.